So the NHL didn't see contact from Taylor Hall with his skate. They didn't see a ton of contact with his fist either, apparently. They gave him a suspension for the right hand to Ilya Lyubushkin's chin. They gave him a fine, yes. What were your thoughts on the NHL's decision or their ruling on the Lyubushkin punch?
You know what, Bonnie? I'm trying really hard not to be surprised by anything, draw comparisons to other. And I know, Kip, I sent you the I'm sure you've talked about Dylan Larkin got suspended for throwing a punch. Very similar play with Matthew Joseph. But if you look at, say, Milan Lucic's history, I think he's been suspended once. I believe it was Cole Sherwood in Columbus for punching a guy with his glove on. And he has done it to Zadorov, who's his teammate now in Calgary. He's done it to Patrick Coletta, Pionk last year in Winnipeg. Milan Lucic has, for some reason, gotten a credit card for throwing punches. There's been the odd fine, but for the most part, it's been nothing. I mean, you can search last year. They're playing Winnipeg. He hits a guy from behind on the boards. I believe got a major there, but no suspension. Pionk comes into the scrum, and then Lucic suckers him. There was no suspension for that either. So I think what we end up doing, even within a game itself, we always try to. I don't know if you guys had brothers growing up, but you develop the mentality. Well, if he could do this, then I should be able to do this, and that's not the way it works. There doesn't seem to be any relation. It's like the younger brother always gets the favorite treatment, and it's frustrating because you want to sit down and say, okay, here's the Dylan Larkin play, here's the Taylor Hall play. Well, what was the difference? And I'm asking not as criticism, but to say educate us as to why very similar plays, one's a suspension and one's a fine.
We're talking to Jim Ralph, Toronto Maple Leaf radio color analyst. If you watch Taylor Hall sucker punch essentially Lyubushkin, you watch Marchand cross-check Tavares, and both minimal or no repercussions, a 10-minute misconduct, whatever. Is that kind of open up for other teams to watch this and say, yeah, we'll take runs at this Toronto Maple Leaf team?
Yeah. I mean, if you get to a point where you can get away with it. I mean, it's funny that, Marchand got away with cross checks, which I don't think were, horribly vicious. But if there's a crackdown on cross checking this year in the league, you think maybe one of them should have been called. And yet it's the official gives him a 10-minute conduct because Marchand was chirping the official. It had nothing to do with what Marchand was doing to Tavares. So, it would be interesting to see how a playoff series was called. And let's not forget Shea Weber last year got a cross-checking fine in the playoffs against the Leafs. There was another one, Edmonton, on Wayne Simmons, that wasn't a fine or a penalty. That was probably more vicious, or to me, I would put the Edmonton one, ahead of what Austin Matthews did to get suspended. So, but like I said, that's where you start to drive yourself crazy is trying to guess at how a game is going to be called, and then in fairness to the officials, I mean that was the great thing for us sitting down by the boards during the outdoor game is again realizing how fast it was and how little space there is on the ice and it is the most difficult, by far the most difficult sport to call. But there are just some things that, you have a hard time not shaking your head at. And, even the fact that, and I know this has been brought up a lot, and some people are critical of you for bringing it up, but you have fourth-line guys in Arizona draw more penalties than Austin Matthews. There are just some things that you say, well, you know what, if that would be a huge disadvantage if that continues on into the postseason. I mean, from a Leaf standpoint. And I guess the only way around that is to say if that's, the precedent that's being sent, then allow it both ways. Don't call a holding penalty after you've allowed 3 cross-checks and a sucker punch.
Right. Ralphie, Austin Matthews is in the pursuit of 50 goals and Rick Five's record. He has goals in 3 straight games, points in 10 straight games, 2 points last night, just like the night before. And I went on the show about 20 minutes ago and said, I don't think he's played great the last couple games. I don't know. Well, maybe I've got a high bar for this guy, but what are your thoughts on his pursuit of these records, how he's played? Is it affecting him, or is it just he's ticking along like he normally does to your eye?
Yeah, I mean, I agree that obviously there's games that he's just absolutely dominant, the best player on the ice. But it always reminds you of a hitter that can go 4 for 20 and hit 3 homers, a bases clearing double.
Right.
That all it takes is that one moment, that split second for him to be the difference in a game. So I think that's what's impressive though, Bourne. You could say that he hasn't been as dominant the last few games, but yeah, the 8-9 game point streak, and it's Kip, you might remember, like you'd see Gretzky in a game and you go, you know what, he wasn't that noticeable when he ended up with a goal and 5 assists, but he didn't really dominate, the way we've seen him in other games.
Right.
And I think the great players are like that. And to me, even goaltenders, you can see a goaltender at times that he's having a tough night. He's fighting the puck, but all of a sudden he makes 3 great saves and a 5-4 win in the dying minutes to win it for you. And I think that's what, kind of separates the mortals from the superstars, or that guys that maybe not 100% on their game, but still factor into a win.
I recall, I don't know when it was, maybe 6 weeks ago, watching one of the sports telecasts, maybe it was Sportsnet, and someone said that, the Leafs should get their full roster finally. And I don't think it ever came. Today we're looking at Muzzin, Sandin, Hall, Kasha, Mrazek now, Lyubushkin, Campbell. I mean, it's a lot of guys on the sidelines here. At what point do we ask ourselves if this team even has the durability to go a couple of rounds in the playoffs? Is it an issue, or again, is this maybe just some hard luck, bad luck?
Well, I mean, I guess, hopefully we've got 5 weeks left before the playoffs start. Hopefully this is the second wave or third wave where we're going to get through it, into the postseason. But I think what you're going to find, because so many teams and the Leafs have a really busy April coming up, but everybody does. And you might see a lot of injuries start to pile up everywhere. I mean, Ed was hurt when Florida comes in. A lot of teams are going through it. But I think when you're going to be playing every second day from now till the end of April, I think you're going to see a lot of teams go through this. And, maybe from a Leafs standpoint, you hope that, one of your core guys don't go through it, and you slowly start to get everybody back and ready for the postseason.
Another thing we've talked about on this show is the addition of Mark Giordano and how effective he's been for this team. We're looking at the last minute of hockey games. They're putting him out there. He seems like such a calming influence for them. I'm assuming you've been impressed by him. What are your thoughts on how big a role he could handle in the playoffs? Is this a guy who can still play 20 minutes in a top 4 role?
Yeah, and I think he's proved that. I mean,
yeah.
The great thing about the home games where you get to watch live is you get to see where he positions himself and how he reads the play, and I'm not making a comparison between Giordano and Nick Lidstrom, but even as Lidstrom got older, he was so smart that he could outthink you. He wasn't the most physical guy. He wasn't intimidating, but he was just so smart. Making a 5-foot pass out of the zone, intercepting shots, blocking shots, and that's what I've noticed with Giordano. And I'll be honest, my expectations weren't through the roof when he was brought in. I thought it'd be nice to have that experience and maybe help out, but he's still got it. And that I think maybe sometimes you get a trade like from Seattle to Toronto, it rejuvenates you too.
In saying that, with Liljegren kind of stepping up in the last little while, you envision hopefully a healthy group, and it's never too early to talk about defensive pairs. Just ask Justin Bourne here. But who is the odd man out in your opinion? Would it come down to Hall or Liljegren as a seventh D?
You know what, Pip? I'm going to say. I mean, we'll see what this injury is to Hall. But since he got hurt in the outdoor game against Buffalo, I think he's been fantastic. I think the last, and maybe, you give Giordano a lot of credit for that. But to me, even what was the goal Mikheyev got set up by Marner the other night against Florida? Justin Hall made a great play to get it out and took a big hit.
Yeah.
And was able to get it out. And it just seems like his skating is back to what we saw most of last year, and I think he's been dynamite, with Giordano. So I don't know if I'd look at breaking those guys up. I think that you've got something. So if in a perfect world you get Muzzin back, it might be you have Sandine and Liljegren ready if through injuries or whatever in the postseason.
Yeah, they're going to play, right? We know how the postseason works, but it is interesting to think that, like, when Muzzin comes back, I can suddenly see if a role for him maybe as a third pair guy with the Leafs, which might be perfect. I think there are a lot of people watching him play this year going, has he got too much on his plate trying to help Justin Hall be, this type of player that they need him to be? And I don't know. It just seems like to me that Muzzin may have to do a little bit less with the addition of Giordano.
Yeah, and you still wonder the effects of two concussions,
Right.
within 6 weeks of each other as well. So it's it's probably the big thing is you're hoping you can get him back to full health, and I think with by getting Giordano and the way the defense have been of late, I don't think there's that urgency to rush him back before he's ready. Thankfully they're not in a race to make the playoffs. It's just all about seeding right now. So I'm with you, and it could still be very valuable on the penalty kill and everything else, but maybe reducing the minutes can actually benefit them in the long run.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Ralphie, but